Picture this. You're 25, fresh out of college, and you've just landed your dream job at a prestigious marketing firm. Everything seems perfect until you meet your boss's wife at the company holiday party. She's elegant, mysterious, and there's something in the way she looks at you that makes your heart race. Over the following months, she starts showing up at the office more frequently, always finding reasons to talk to you alone. Then one evening, as you're working late, she corners you in the empty conference room and says the words that will change everything. "I know you want me." But what happens next isn't what you'd expect, and the truth behind her words will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about ambition, mentorship, and the power of believing in someone's potential. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Maya Chen had always been the type of person who worked twice as hard as everyone else just to prove she belonged. At 25, she was the youngest account coordinator at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions, a boutique firm in downtown Seattle that handled campaigns for Fortune 500 companies. The office occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower overlooking Elliott Bay, and every morning when Maya stepped out of the elevator onto the 32nd floor, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had graduated summa cum laude from the University of Washington with a degree in marketing and communications, but landing this job hadn't been easy. Pinnacle was known for hiring only the best, and competition was fierce. Maya had gone through 5 rounds of interviews, presented 3 different campaign mock-ups, and waited 2 agonizing months before finally getting the call. When she walked into the sleek office on her first day, wearing her best suit and carrying a leather portfolio her parents had given her as a graduation gift, she knew she was starting the career she'd dreamed of since she was 16. The work was demanding but exhilarating. Maya found herself managing social media campaigns for tech startups, coordinating print advertisements for retail chains, and occasionally sitting in on strategy meetings with senior executives. Her direct supervisor was David Sterling, a man in his early 40s who had built Pinnacle from a 2-person operation into one of Seattle's most respected marketing firms. David was intense, brilliant, and had a reputation for pushing his employees to their absolute limits. He expected perfection, and Maya was determined to deliver it. For the first 3 months, Maya threw herself into every project with relentless focus. She stayed late, came in early, and volunteered for assignments that other coordinators avoided. Her colleagues respected her work ethic, even if some of them thought she was trying too hard. Maya didn't care about their opinions. She had student loans to pay off, an apartment in Capitol Hill that consumed half her salary, and dreams of one day running her own agency. Every campaign she worked on was a step toward that goal. The first time Maya met Vivian Sterling was at the company's annual holiday party in December. The event was held at a downtown hotel, and Maya had spent more money than she could afford on a black cocktail dress that made her feel sophisticated and professional. She was standing near the bar, nursing a glass of wine and making small talk with her fellow coordinators, when she noticed a woman across the room who seemed to command attention without even trying. Vivian Sterling was stunning in a way that seemed almost effortless. She appeared to be in her late 30s, with shoulder-length auburn hair that caught the light when she moved, and she wore a deep emerald dress that probably cost more than Maya made in a month. But it wasn't just her appearance that made her striking. There was something about the way she carried herself, a quiet confidence that made people gravitate toward her. Maya watched as Vivian moved through the crowd, greeting employees with warm smiles, remembering names, asking thoughtful questions about projects and families. When David Sterling appeared at Vivian's side, Maya realized who she was. She had heard mentions of David's wife in passing conversations around the office, but she had never seen her before. David's hand rested gently on Vivian's lower back as he introduced her to a group of senior executives, and Maya could see the genuine affection between them. They looked like the kind of couple who belonged on the cover of a business magazine, successful and perfectly matched. Maya was so absorbed in observing the couple that she didn't notice when Vivian began walking in her direction. Suddenly, she found herself face to face with David's wife, who extended a manicured hand and smiled warmly. "You must be Maya," Vivian said, her voice carrying a slight southern accent that Maya hadn't expected. "David talks about you constantly. He says you're one of the most promising coordinators he's ever worked with." Maya felt her cheeks flush with surprise and pride. "Thank you, Mrs. Sterling. That means a lot coming from him." "Please, call me Vivian," she replied, her smile never wavering. David tells me you've been working on the Henderson Electronics campaign. That's one of our most challenging accounts. Maya nodded, impressed that Vivian knew the details of her work. It's been a learning experience, but I think we're making good progress. I'm sure you are, Vivian said, and there was something in her tone that made Maya feel like she was being evaluated, though not in an uncomfortable way. David has very high standards, and he doesn't praise lightly. You should be proud of yourself. They talked for a few more minutes about Maya's background, her goals, and her impressions of Seattle. Vivian listened intently, asking follow-up questions that showed she was genuinely interested in what Maya had to say. When David appeared to reclaim his wife's attention, Vivian squeezed Maya's arm gently and said, "I hope we'll have a chance to talk again soon." As Maya watched the couple move on to greet other employees, she found herself thinking about Vivian for the rest of the evening. There had been something magnetic about her, a warmth and intelligence that made Maya want to know more about her. She pushed the thought aside, reminding herself that Vivian was her boss's wife and that it was natural for her to be curious about the people David worked with. The weeks following the holiday party passed in their usual blur of deadlines, client meetings, and late-night revisions. Maya continued to excel in her role, earning praise from David and respect from her colleagues. She was assigned to increasingly important projects, and her confidence grew with each successful campaign launch. The Henderson Electronics project she had discussed with Vivian turned out to be one of her biggest successes, resulting in a 20% increase in the client's social media engagement and a contract renewal worth 6 figures. It was in late January when Maya first noticed that Vivian had started visiting the office more frequently. She would appear in the afternoon, always impeccably dressed, carrying coffee or pastries from expensive downtown cafes. She would spend time in David's office, but Maya noticed that she also made an effort to walk around the floor, checking in with various employees and asking about their projects. The first time Vivian stopped by Maya's desk, it was on a particularly stressful Thursday afternoon. Maya was juggling 3 different campaigns, her computer screen was filled with multiple browser tabs, and she had been surviving on coffee and determination for the past 6 hours. She looked up to find Vivian standing beside her cubicle, holding 2 cups of coffee from the boutique place downstairs. "You look like you could use this," Vivian said, placing one of the cups on Maya's desk. "David mentioned you've been pulling some long hours on the Morrison Industries pitch." Maya accepted the coffee gratefully. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Inhaling the rich aroma. "Thank you so much. This is exactly what I needed." "Mind if I sit for a minute?" Vivian asked, gesturing to the empty chair beside Maya's desk. "I'd love to hear how the pitch is coming along." Maya felt a flutter of nervousness. It wasn't uncommon for executive spouses to visit the office, but it was unusual for them to take such a personal interest in individual projects. Still, Vivian's manner was so warm and genuine that Maya found herself relaxing as she explained the challenges she was facing with the Morrison campaign. "The client wants something innovative, but they're also very risk-averse," Maya explained, pulling up her presentation slides. "I'm trying to find a balance between creativity and safety." Vivian leaned in to look at the screen, and Maya caught a hint of her perfume, something subtle and expensive. "These concepts are really strong," Vivian said, pointing to one of Maya's designs. "Have you considered emphasizing the ROI potential more heavily? Sometimes conservative clients need to see the numbers before they can appreciate the creativity." Maya paused, considering the suggestion. It was exactly the kind of insight she had been struggling to articulate. "That's brilliant," she said, already making mental notes about how to restructure her presentation. "I was so focused on the creative elements that I didn't spend enough time on the financial projections." "You'll figure it out," Vivian said with confidence. David wasn't exaggerating when he said you have exceptional potential. They talked for another 10 minutes, with Vivian offering thoughtful suggestions and asking perceptive questions about Maya's approach. When she finally stood to leave, Maya felt energized in a way she hadn't all day. "Thank you for the coffee and the advice," Maya said. "This really helped." "Anytime," Vivian replied. "I mean that. If you ever want to bounce ideas off someone, I'm always happy to listen." As Vivian walked away, Maya found herself watching her retreating figure. There was something about their conversation that had felt different from typical workplace interactions. Vivian hadn't just been making polite small talk. She had engaged with Maya's work on a substantive level, offering insights that were genuinely valuable. Maya turned back to her computer screen, but she found it difficult to concentrate on her presentation slides. Over the following weeks, Vivian's visits to the office became more regular, and she made a point of stopping by Maya's desk each time. Sometimes she brought coffee or tea. Other times, she simply appeared with questions about Maya's current projects or suggestions for approaches she might consider. Maya began to look forward to these conversations, finding that Vivian's perspective often helped her see problems from new angles. There was an easy rapport between them that surprised Maya. Despite their different backgrounds and the significant gap in their life experiences, they seemed to understand each other intuitively. Vivian had a way of asking exactly the right questions to help Maya clarify her thinking, and Maya found herself sharing details about her work that she rarely discussed with anyone else. One afternoon in early March, Maya was working alone in the conference room, spreading presentation materials across the large table as she prepared for a client meeting the next morning. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear footsteps in the hallway, and she jumped slightly when she looked up to find Vivian standing in the doorway. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you," Vivian said, stepping into the room. "David mentioned you were preparing for the Cascade Technologies presentation tomorrow." Maya gestured to the materials scattered across the table. "I'm trying to organize everything so it flows logically, but there's so much information to cover." Vivian walked around the table, examining the various charts, mock-ups, and strategy documents that Maya had laid out. "This is impressive work," she said after a few minutes. "You've really thought through every aspect of their needs." "I hope so," Maya replied. "This could be our biggest account if we land it." "You will," Vivian said with such certainty that Maya looked up in surprise. "David told me that Cascade specifically requested to work with you after hearing about your success with the Henderson campaign." Maya felt a surge of pride mixed with anxiety. She had been so focused on preparing the best possible presentation that she hadn't fully processed the significance of being personally requested by such a major client. "That's both exciting and terrifying," Maya admitted. Vivian smiled knowingly. "The best opportunities usually are." She moved to stand beside Maya, close enough that Maya could sense her presence, even when she wasn't looking directly at her. "You know, I used to work in marketing before I met David." This was the first personal information Vivian had shared about her background, and Maya turned to face her with interest. "Really? What kind of marketing?" "Brand strategy for luxury goods," Vivian explained. "I worked for a firm in New York that handled campaigns for high-end fashion and jewelry companies. It was demanding work, but I loved the challenge of creating desire for products that people didn't necessarily need." Maya was intrigued. She had always wondered about Vivian's professional background, noting the way she seemed to understand marketing concepts with more than casual familiarity. "What made you leave?" Maya asked. Vivian was quiet for a moment, her expression becoming thoughtful. "I met David at a conference in Chicago, and we had one of those connections that changes everything. When he asked me to move to Seattle and help him build Pinnacle, I realized I wanted to be part of something bigger than just my own career." There was something wistful in Vivian's tone that made Maya study her face more carefully. "Do you ever miss it? Having your own career, I mean." "Sometimes," Vivian admitted, "but watching David build this company, seeing talented people like you develop and succeed, it's been fulfilling in a different way." She paused, then added, "Though I'll admit, I sometimes wonder what I might have accomplished if I had stayed in New York and kept climbing that particular ladder." Maya sensed that this was a rare moment of vulnerability from Vivian, and she felt honored that she was willing to share such personal thoughts. "It's never too late to go back to it, is it?" Vivian smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her expression. "At my age, with the way the industry has changed, it would be like starting over completely. The marketing world moves so fast now, especially with digital strategies and social media. I'd be competing with people like you who grew up with these tools." "But you have experience and perspective that younger marketers don't have," Maya pointed out. "That has to count for something." "You're sweet to say that," Vivian replied, and Maya noticed that she seemed to be looking at her with a new intensity. "You have such confidence in yourself and others. It's refreshing." They stood there for a moment in comfortable silence, surrounded by Maya's presentation materials. Maya was acutely aware of Vivian's presence beside her, the subtle scent of her perfume, the way the afternoon light from the conference room windows highlighted the auburn threads in her hair. "I should let you get back to your preparation," Vivian said finally, but she didn't immediately move toward the door. Instead, she placed her hand briefly on Maya's shoulder. "You're going to do brilliantly tomorrow. Cascade would be lucky to have you." The touch was brief and seemingly casual, but Maya felt a jolt of electricity that surprised her. She watched as Vivian walked toward the door, her movements graceful and purposeful. "Vivian?" Maya called out, not entirely sure what she wanted to say. Vivian turned back, her eyebrows raised questioningly. "Thank you," Maya said, "for the encouragement and for sharing your story with me. It means a lot." Vivian's smile was warm and genuine. "Thank you for listening. It's been a long time since I've talked about that part of my life with anyone." After Vivian left, Maya tried to return her focus to the presentation, but she found her thoughts drifting back to their conversation. There had been something different about the way Vivian had looked at her, an intensity that went beyond casual interest in her work. Maya told herself she was reading too much into a simple friendly gesture, but she couldn't shake the feeling that their interaction had crossed some invisible line. The Cascade Technologies presentation the next morning was a complete success. Maya delivered her pitch with confidence and precision, fielding questions from the client's executive team with expertise that surprised even herself. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that Cascade was ready to sign with Pinnacle, and they specifically requested that Maya serve as the lead coordinator for their account. David was effusive in his praise when Maya returned to the office, and news of her success spread quickly through the company. Several colleagues stopped by her desk to offer congratulations, and Maya felt a sense of accomplishment that was both professional and deeply personal. Late that afternoon, as Maya was updating her project files and preparing to start work on the Cascade account, she received a text message from an unknown number. "Congratulations on landing Cascade. David told me the presentation was flawless. I knew you would succeed." "Vivian?" Maya stared at the message, wondering how Vivian had gotten her personal phone number. She realized that David probably had access to all employee contact information and could have shared it, but the fact that Vivian had chosen to text her personally felt significant. She typed back, "Thank you for believing in me. Your advice yesterday really helped." Vivian's response came quickly, "I'd love to hear all about it. Are you free for coffee tomorrow afternoon?" Maya hesitated for a moment. Meeting Vivian for coffee felt like it might be crossing a professional boundary, but she found herself wanting to share the details of her success with someone who would truly understand the achievement. "I'd like that," she typed back. They arranged to meet at a small cafe in Pike Place Market, away from the downtown business district where they might encounter other Pinnacle employees. Maya told herself that this was simply a mentor-like relationship, that Vivian was taking a maternal interest in her career development. But as she put her phone away, she couldn't ignore the flutter of anticipation in her stomach. The next afternoon, Maya arrived at the cafe a few minutes early and found a table near the window overlooking Elliott Bay. She had changed out of her usual work attire into jeans and a soft blue sweater, wanting to look approachable rather than formally professional. When Vivian arrived, she was also dressed more casually than Maya had ever seen her, wearing dark slacks and a cream-colored silk blouse that somehow made her look both elegant and approachable. "You look relaxed," Vivian observed as she sat down across from Maya. "Success suits you." Maya laughed, feeling more at ease than she had expected. "I feel like I can finally breathe." Landing Cascade was such a relief. They ordered coffee and pastries, and Maya found herself recounting every detail of the presentation, from her opening remarks to the client's questions to the moment when she realized she had won them over. Vivian listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and celebrating each small victory in Maya's narrative. "The way you handled their concerns about budget flexibility was particularly smart," Vivian noted. "That's the kind of strategic thinking that separates good coordinators from great ones." "I keep feeling like I'm still learning," Maya admitted. "Every project teaches me something new about the business." "That's the sign of someone who's going to go far," Vivian said. "The people who think they already know everything are the ones who stop growing." They talked for over an hour, their conversation ranging from Maya's career goals to Vivian's experiences in New York to their shared observations about the marketing industry. Maya found herself sharing ambitions she rarely voiced aloud, including her dream of eventually starting her own agency. "What would make your agency different?" Vivian asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. Maya thought for a moment. "I think a lot of marketing firms focus too much on flashy creativity without really understanding the client's core business needs. I'd want to build an agency that combines innovative thinking with deep strategic analysis." "That's exactly the kind of approach that would have appealed to me when I was working," Vivian said. "Most agencies pitched us concepts that looked beautiful but didn't necessarily drive sales." "Did you ever think about starting your own firm?" Maya asked. Vivian's expression became contemplative. "I thought about it constantly. I had ideas, potential clients, even a business plan sketched out. But then, I met David, and my priorities shifted." There was something in Vivian's tone that suggested this shift hadn't been entirely without regret, and Maya felt a pang of sympathy for dreams deferred. "It's not too late," Maya said gently. "With your experience and connections, you could still do it." Vivian smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "That's kind of you to say, but the moment has passed. I'm in a different phase of my life now." Maya wanted to argue the point, to tell Vivian that it was never too late to pursue dreams, but she sensed that pushing would be unwelcome. Instead, she reached across the table and briefly squeezed Vivian's hand. "Thank you for sharing that with me," she said, "and thank you for all the advice and encouragement. I don't think I would have been as confident yesterday without our conversation." Vivian's expression softened, and she didn't immediately pull her hand away from Maya's touch. "You would have succeeded regardless. You have something special, Maya. A combination of intelligence, drive, and intuition that's rare in this business." The intensity in Vivian's voice made Maya's pulse quicken, and she became acutely aware of the contact between their hands. She found herself looking into Vivian's eyes, trying to read the emotion she saw there. "I should probably get going," Maya said reluctantly, glancing at her watch. "I have some prep work to do for Monday's Cascade kickoff meeting." "Of course," Vivian replied, but she seemed as reluctant to end their time together as Maya felt. As they walked out of the cafe together, Vivian turned to Maya with a smile that seemed to hold promises of future conversations. "Let's do this again soon," she said. "I've really enjoyed getting to know you better." Maya nodded, knowing that she would think about this afternoon for the rest of the weekend. Over the following weeks, Maya threw herself into the Cascade Technologies account with renewed energy. The project was complex, involving a complete rebranding initiative that would touch every aspect of the client's marketing presence. Maya coordinated with graphic designers, copywriters, web developers, and social media specialists, managing timelines and ensuring that every element of the campaign aligned with the strategic vision she had presented. The work was demanding, often requiring 12-hour days and weekend sessions, but Maya thrived on the challenge. She felt like she was finally operating at the level she had always aspired to, making decisions that would impact a major corporation's market position, and collaborating with senior-level executives as an equal rather than a junior employee seeking approval. David was clearly impressed with her performance, giving her increasing autonomy and including her in strategy discussions that were typically reserved for senior staff. Maya's colleagues began treating her differently as well, seeking her input on their own projects and recognizing her as someone whose career was clearly on an upward trajectory. Throughout this period, Vivian continued to visit the office regularly, and their interactions took on a pattern that felt both natural and charged with unspoken meaning. Vivian would stop by Maya's desk with coffee or small treats, always timing her visits for moments when Maya appeared stressed or overwhelmed. Their conversations were ostensibly about work, but they often veered into more personal territory, touching on Maya's background, her goals, and her observations about the industry. Maya found herself looking forward to these visits with an intensity that she tried not to examine too closely. There was something about Vivian's attention that made her feel seen and valued in a way that went beyond professional recognition. Vivian had a gift for asking exactly the right questions to help Maya clarify her thinking, and she offered insights that consistently proved valuable. One evening in late April, Maya was working alone in the office, trying to finalize a presentation for Cascade's executive board meeting the following morning. Most of her colleagues had left hours earlier, and the floor was quiet except for the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. Maya had been staring at the same slide for 20 minutes, unable to decide whether her messaging was too aggressive or not compelling enough. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear footsteps in the hallway, and she looked up in surprise when she heard a gentle knock on her cubicle wall. "I thought I might find you here," Vivian said, holding a bag that smelled like Chinese takeout. "David mentioned you'd probably be working late." Maya glanced at the clock on her computer screen and was shocked to see that it was nearly 9 o'clock. "I didn't realize how late it had gotten." "When was the last time you ate something?" Vivian asked, settling into the chair beside Maya's desk. Maya tried to remember and realized she had skipped lunch, surviving on coffee and determination for most of the day. "This morning, I think." Vivian shook her head with mock disapproval and began unpacking containers of food. "You can't sustain this pace without taking care of yourself." The smell of the food made Maya realize how hungry she was, and she accepted a container of pad thai gratefully. They ate in comfortable companionship, with Vivian asking about Maya's presentation and offering suggestions for strengthening her key points. "You're overthinking this," Vivian observed after Maya explained her concerns about the messaging. "Your instincts are usually right. Trust them." "It's just such an important presentation," Maya said. "If Cascade's board approves this campaign, it could establish Pinnacle as a major player in the tech sector. And if they don't approve it, you'll revise the approach and try again," Vivian pointed out. "One presentation isn't going to make or break your career." Maya knew Vivian was right, but the pressure she felt was about more than just professional success. She had been working toward moments like this her entire adult life, and the possibility of failure felt overwhelming. "Can I tell you something?" Maya said impulsively. Vivian nodded, her expression encouraging. "Sometimes I feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not," Maya admitted. "Like I'm playing the role of a successful marketing executive, but underneath I'm still just a girl from a middle-class family who's terrified of not being good enough." Vivian's expression softened with understanding. "Everyone feels that way sometimes. The people who appear most confident are often the ones struggling hardest with self-doubt." "Even you?" Maya asked. Vivian laughed softly. "Especially me." "Do you think it was easy to walk into David's world, with his Ivy League education and his family connections?" "I spent years feeling like I was auditioning for a role I wasn't qualified for." Maya found it difficult to imagine Vivian feeling insecure about anything. She always seemed so poised, so comfortable in any situation. "But you found your place," Maya said. "Eventually," Vivian agreed. "But it took time, and I had to learn to trust my own judgment rather than constantly seeking validation from others." They finished their food and returned to discussing Maya's presentation, with Vivian helping her refine her key messages and practice her delivery. By the time they were done, Maya felt significantly more confident about the next morning's meeting. "Thank you," Maya said as they prepared to leave the office together. "For the food, the advice, everything." "You don't need to thank me," Vivian replied. "I enjoy our conversations. You challenge me to think about things in new ways." As they waited for the elevator, Maya found herself acutely aware of Vivian's presence beside her. There was something about the quiet intimacy of their evening together that felt different from their previous interactions. Maya glanced sideways at Vivian, noting the way the office lighting caught the subtle highlights in her hair, the elegant line of her profile. "Maya," Vivian said softly, and when Maya turned to face her, she found Vivian looking at her with an expression that was difficult to interpret. "Yes?" For a moment, it seemed like Vivian was about to say something significant. But then the elevator arrived, and the moment passed. "Good luck tomorrow," Vivian said as they stepped into the elevator. "Not that you'll need it." The next morning's presentation was another triumph for Maya. The Cascade Executive Board not only approved her campaign proposal, but increased their budget by 30%, allowing for additional digital components that Maya had included as optional elements. David was so pleased with the outcome that he announced Maya's promotion to Senior Account Coordinator at the weekly staff meeting, along with a salary increase that would finally allow her some financial breathing room. Maya felt like she was floating through the rest of the day, accepting congratulations from colleagues and already making plans for how she would approach her expanded responsibilities. Late that afternoon, she received another text from Vivian. "David told me the good news. I'm so proud of you. This calls for a proper celebration." Maya replied quickly, "Thank you. I still can't believe it actually happened." "Believe it," You've earned every bit of this success. Are you free for dinner tomorrow evening? I know a place where we can toast your promotion properly. Maya hesitated for only a moment before responding. I'd love that. The restaurant Vivian had chosen was unlike anywhere Maya had been before. Located in a converted warehouse in the Fremont neighborhood, it had an intimate, sophisticated atmosphere with exposed brick walls, soft lighting, and tables spaced far enough apart to allow for private conversation. Maya had spent more than she could afford on a new dress for the occasion, a deep navy sheath that made her feel elegant and confident. Vivian was already seated when Maya arrived, wearing a black dress that was both classic and modern, her hair styled in loose waves that framed her face beautifully. She stood to greet Maya with a warm hug that lasted a moment longer than might have been strictly appropriate. You look stunning, Vivian said, and Maya felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. Thank you. This place is amazing. They ordered wine and settled into conversation that flowed even more easily than usual. Vivian wanted to hear every detail of Maya's presentation and promotion, and Maya found herself sharing not just the professional highlights, but also her emotional reactions to the day's events. I keep waiting for someone to tell me it was all a mistake, Maya admitted over their appetizers. Imposter syndrome, Vivian diagnosed with a knowing smile. I struggled with that for years. Even now, sometimes I wonder if people take me seriously, or if they just see me as David's wife. Anyone who talks to you for 5 minutes would know you're brilliant in your own right, Maya said earnestly. Vivian's smile was both pleased and slightly sad. You're very kind. But perception can be more powerful than reality in situations like mine. As the evening progressed, Maya found herself studying Vivian's face in the candlelight, noting the way her expressions shifted between confidence and vulnerability, the graceful movements of her hands as she spoke, the way she seemed to give Maya her complete attention whenever she was talking. Can I ask you something personal? Maya said as they waited for their entrees to arrive. Of course. Are you happy? I mean, really happy with your life the way it is now? Vivian was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in her glass thoughtfully. That's a complicated question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry. No, it's okay, Vivian said quickly. I appreciate that you care enough to ask. She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. I love David, and I'm proud of what he's built with Pinnacle. But sometimes I wonder who I might have become if I had made different choices. It's not too late to find out, Maya said gently. Vivian looked at her with an expression that was difficult to read. You have such faith in second chances. I have faith in you, Maya replied without thinking, then felt her cheeks warm at the intensity of her own words. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as their food arrived, but Maya could sense an undercurrent of tension that hadn't been there at the beginning of the evening. Vivian seemed more thoughtful, more guarded, as if Maya's questions had touched on something she preferred not to examine too closely. After dinner, they walked slowly back toward the parking garage, neither seeming eager to end the evening. The Seattle spring air was cool and clean, and the streets were relatively quiet for a Friday night. Thank you for this, Maya said as they reached Vivian's car. It's been a perfect way to celebrate. The pleasure was entirely mine, Vivian replied, but she didn't immediately move to unlock her car door. Instead, she turned to face Maya fully, and in the dim light of the parking garage, her expression was intense and unreadable. Maya, she said, her voice softer than usual. Yes? For a moment, they stood there looking at each other, and Maya felt the same electric tension she had experienced during their conversation in the conference room weeks earlier. She found herself taking a small step closer to Vivian, drawn by something she didn't fully understand. I should go, Vivian said suddenly, breaking the spell. David will be wondering where I am. Maya nodded, feeling slightly disoriented by the abrupt shift in mood. Of course. Thank you again for dinner. She watched as Vivian got into her car and drove away, leaving Maya standing alone in the parking garage with the distinct feeling that something significant had almost happened between them. Over the weekend, Maya tried to focus on preparing for her new responsibilities as senior account coordinator, but she found her thoughts returning repeatedly to her dinner with Vivian. There had been moments during the evening when she felt like they were on the verge of acknowledging something that existed beneath the surface of their friendship, but every time the conversation approached that territory, one of them had pulled back. Maya told herself that she was reading too much into innocent interactions, that Vivian was simply being kind to a younger colleague who reminded her of her own professional aspirations. But she couldn't shake the memory of the way Vivian had looked at her in the parking garage, or the feeling that they had been communicating on a level that went beyond words. Monday morning brought a new set of challenges as Maya settled into her expanded role. She now had oversight responsibilities for 3 major accounts, including Cascade, and she was expected to mentor 2 junior coordinators who had recently joined the firm. The increased workload was manageable but demanding, requiring her to develop new organizational systems and delegate responsibilities more effectively than she had in the past. David seemed pleased with her early performance in the senior role, giving her additional autonomy and including her in strategic planning sessions with Pinnacle's executive team. Maya felt like she was finally being recognized as a serious professional rather than a promising beginner, and the increased respect from her colleagues was deeply satisfying. Vivian continued to visit the office regularly, but Maya noticed that their interactions had become slightly more formal since their dinner together. Vivian still stopped by Maya's desk occasionally, but their conversations were shorter and more focused on work-related topics. Maya wondered if she had somehow crossed a line during their dinner, but Vivian's manner remained warm and encouraging, just less intimate than it had been before. 3 weeks into May, Maya was working late again, this time preparing quarterly reports for all 3 of her major accounts. The office was nearly empty, with only a few dedicated souls remaining at their desks as the evening stretched toward 10 o'clock. Maya was so absorbed in analyzing campaign performance metrics that she didn't notice someone approaching until she heard her name being called softly. She looked up to find Vivian standing beside her desk. But something was different. Vivian's usual composed demeanor seemed strained, and there was an intensity in her eyes that Maya had never seen before. "We need to talk," Vivian said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can you meet me in the conference room?" Maya's heart began to race, though she wasn't sure why. "Of course. Is everything okay?" Vivian didn't answer directly, simply turning and walking toward the conference room at the end of the hall. Maya saved her work quickly and followed, her mind spinning with possibilities. Had she done something wrong? Was there a problem with one of her accounts? The conference room was dimly lit, with only the city lights from the windows providing illumination. Vivian had positioned herself near the far end of the table, her silhouette elegant against the backdrop of Seattle's skyline. When Maya entered and closed the door behind her, Vivian turned to face her with an expression that was both vulnerable and determined. "I've been thinking about our conversation at dinner," Vivian began, her voice steady but quiet. "About second chances, about who I might have become if I had made different choices." Maya remained silent, sensing that this was a moment that required careful listening rather than quick responses. "I want you to know that these past few months, getting to know you, watching your career develop, it's awakened something in me that I thought I had buried years ago," Vivian continued. "Not romantic feelings," she added quickly as if reading Maya's thoughts, "but professional ambition, drive, the desire to build something of my own again." Maya felt a mixture of relief and confusion. "I'm not sure I understand." Vivian moved closer, her eyes never leaving Maya's face. "I know you want me," she said, and Maya's breath caught in her throat. "I know you want me to be the mentor I once was, the professional I used to be. I can see it in the way you look at me when I talk about my career in New York, the way you encourage me to think about starting over." Maya's mind reeled as she processed Vivian's words. This wasn't what she had expected at all. "I've been living vicariously through your success," Vivian admitted, her voice growing stronger. "Watching you land clients, earn promotions, build the kind of career I gave up. And I realize that what I want isn't to go backward and reclaim my old life, but to move forward and create something new." "What are you saying?" Maya asked, her voice barely audible. Vivian's smile was radiant and determined. "I'm saying that I want to start my own consulting firm, and I want you to be my business partner. I have the capital, the connections, and the experience. You have the current market knowledge, the fresh perspectives, and the drive that I remember having when I was your age." Maya stared at her in shock. "You want me to leave Pinnacle?" I want us to build something better than Pinnacle, Vivian said with conviction. A firm that combines strategic thinking with innovative execution. A place where brilliant people like you don't have to wait years to be recognized for their contributions. The offer was so unexpected, so completely different from what Maya had imagined this conversation might entail, that she found herself speechless. I know it's a lot to consider, Vivian said, interpreting Maya's silence as hesitation. You have a good thing here, and David has been an excellent mentor to you. But Maya, you could have your own agency in 5 years, instead of 15. You could be making decisions instead of implementing other people's visions. Maya's mind raced through the implications of what Vivian was proposing. It was an enormous risk, leaving her secure position at Pinnacle to start something completely new. But it was also an opportunity beyond anything she had imagined possible at this stage of her career. Why me? Maya asked finally. Because you remind me of who I used to be, but you're also who I wish I had been, Vivian replied honestly. You have the technical skills I lack, the market insights I need, and the hunger that I want to reclaim. Together, we could build something extraordinary. Maya looked into Vivian's eyes and saw the same ambition and determination that had driven her own career choices. This wasn't about romance or inappropriate attraction. It was about recognizing potential and having the courage to pursue it. When would we start? Maya heard herself asking, surprised by her own words. Vivian's smile was triumphant. I've already begun setting up the legal structure and securing office space. We could launch in 3 months if you're willing to take the leap with me. Maya thought about her student loans, her apartment rent, the security of her current position. Then she thought about her dreams of running her own agency, of making strategic decisions rather than simply executing them, of building something lasting and meaningful. I need some time to think about it, she said finally. Of course, Vivian replied. Take all the time you need. But Maya, don't let fear keep you from becoming everything you're capable of being. As Maya walked back to her desk to collect her things, her mind buzzed with possibilities and concerns in equal measure. Vivian's offer was both terrifying and exhilarating, representing the kind of opportunity that most marketing professionals could only dream of. Over the following days, Maya found it difficult to concentrate on her work at Pinnacle. Every time she sat in a meeting or worked on a campaign strategy, she found herself imagining how things might be different in her own firm. She began researching the legal requirements for starting a consulting business, analyzing market opportunities in the Seattle area, and calculating the financial implications of leaving her steady salary. A week after Vivian's proposal, Maya requested a meeting with David to discuss her future at Pinnacle. She had decided that she owed him honesty about the opportunity she was considering, even though it meant potentially burning bridges with the company that had given her such a strong foundation. David listened to her carefully as she explained Vivian's offer, his expression remaining neutral throughout her explanation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I can't say I'm surprised, he said finally. Vivian has been talking about getting back into the business for months, and you're exactly the kind of partner who could make her vision successful. Maya was taken aback by his calm reaction. You're not upset? David smiled. Maya, you're an exceptional talent, and talented people eventually outgrow their current situations. I'd rather see you take a calculated risk on something you're passionate about than stay here out of obligation and eventually become frustrated. But what about my accounts, my responsibilities here? We'll manage, David said with confidence. That's what good businesses do when they lose good people. We adapt and move forward. Maya felt a wave of gratitude for David's understanding and support. She had expected him to try to convince her to stay, to make her feel guilty for considering leaving. There is one condition, David continued. I want Pinnacle to be your first client. Vivian's new firm handles our overflow work and special projects. That way, we maintain a relationship that benefits everyone. Maya smiled, recognizing the wisdom and generosity in David's proposal. I think Vivian would love that arrangement. 2 weeks later, Maya submitted her formal resignation to Pinnacle, with a start date at Sterling Chen Consulting set for early August. The name had been Vivian's suggestion, acknowledging both their contributions to the new venture while establishing Maya as an equal partner rather than a junior associate. The transition period was a whirlwind of activity. Maya worked with David to transfer her accounts to other coordinators, while simultaneously helping Vivian finalize office lease agreements, hire support staff, and develop marketing materials for their new firm. They spent hours together planning their service offerings, identifying target clients, and creating operational procedures. Working with Vivian in this capacity revealed new dimensions of her intelligence and business acumen. Maya had always respected Vivian's insights, but seeing her negotiate contracts, analyze market data, and develop strategic frameworks demonstrated a level of professional expertise that was truly impressive. On Maya's last day at Pinnacle, the entire staff gathered in the main conference room for a farewell celebration. David presented her with a framed photograph of the Seattle skyline taken from the office windows, inscribed with a message thanking her for her contributions and wishing her success in her new venture. "Maya came to us as a promising recent graduate," David said in his remarks to the assembled staff. "She's leaving as a proven marketing professional who's ready to build something extraordinary. We're proud to have been part of her journey, and we look forward to working with Sterling Chen Consulting in the years ahead." Maya felt emotional as she looked around the room at colleagues who had become friends, at the office space where she had learned so much about herself and her capabilities. But she also felt excited about the future she and Vivian were creating together. Sterling Chen Consulting officially opened its doors on the first Monday in August, operating out of a modern office space in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. The suite was smaller than Pinnacle's headquarters but beautifully designed, with large windows, contemporary furniture, and a conference room that Maya had helped select. Their first few months were challenging but rewarding. In addition to the overflow work from Pinnacle, they landed contracts with 2 technology startups and an established retail chain looking to refresh their brand identity. Maya found that having decision-making authority over every aspect of their campaigns was both liberating and intimidating, but Vivian's experience and guidance helped her navigate the transition from coordinator to business owner. The partnership between Maya and Vivian worked better than either of them had anticipated. Their different perspectives and complementary skills created a dynamic that allowed them to approach client challenges from multiple angles, resulting in strategies that were both innovative and practical. Maya brought technical expertise and fresh market insights, while Vivian contributed strategic thinking and relationship-building skills that came from years of experience. 6 months after launching Sterling Chen Consulting, they had grown to 8 employees and were generating revenue that exceeded their most optimistic projections. Maya had been able to pay off her student loans ahead of schedule and had started saving for a down payment on her own condo. One evening in late winter, as they were reviewing quarterly financial reports in their conference room, Vivian looked up at Maya with a smile that was both grateful and proud. "You know," she said, "when I made that speech about knowing what you wanted from me, I wasn't entirely sure we could actually pull this off." Maya laughed, remembering the intensity of that moment in Pinnacle's conference room. "I have to admit, when you said those words, I thought you were talking about something completely different." "I know," Vivian replied with amusement. "I could see the panic in your eyes, but I needed to be dramatic enough to get your attention and make you realize that we were both settling for less than we were capable of achieving." Maya looked around their conference room at the awards they had already won for their campaign work, at the business plans spread across the table showing their expansion goals for the following year. "I'm glad you took the risk of asking," she said sincerely. "I'm glad you took the risk of saying yes," Vivian replied. As Maya drove home that night through the familiar streets of Seattle, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since that first phone call from a potential client almost 2 years earlier. She had started as a struggling recent graduate with big dreams and limited resources. Now she was a business owner, a respected marketing professional, and a partner in something that was growing beyond anything she had initially imagined. The relationship with Vivian had evolved from professional admiration to genuine friendship to business partnership, but throughout all its phases, it had been built on mutual respect and shared ambition. Maya realized that sometimes the most important connections in life aren't romantic ones, but the relationships that challenge you to become the best version of yourself. Sterling Chen Consulting continued to thrive, eventually becoming one of Seattle's most sought-after marketing firms. Maya and Vivian's partnership remained strong, based on trust, complementary skills, and a shared commitment to excellence that inspired both their employees and their clients. Years later, when Maya was invited to speak at her alma mater's business school graduation ceremony, She would tell the students about the importance of recognizing opportunities when they arise, even when they come in unexpected forms. She would talk about the value of taking calculated risks, of building relationships based on mutual support rather than competition, and of never being afraid to pursue dreams that seem impossibly ambitious. But she would always remember that it all started with a woman who saw potential in her that she hadn't yet recognized in herself, and who had the courage to propose a partnership that changed both their lives forever. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.